Picture this. You are seated on a lounge chair on your balcony, eating fried plantains. Isn't this a beautiful sight? My first semester in medical school at AUC, the American University of the Caribbean, in St. Martin, I was seated on my balcony eating fried plantains. My friend was texting me, making fun of me that he could see me just enjoying my plantains. The view that I was looking out on was very relaxing. We didn't have any exams yet, so I wasn't really that stressed. But that image and that memory sticks with me. What's up, guys? My name is Dr. Safo Asante. I'm the Successful IMG. Successful because I matched. I'm here so that you can as well. In this video, let's talk about this question. Should I go to a Caribbean school? I'm going to answer this question based on my experience and give you my thoughts. Before we get into this, let's talk about how I ended up in the Caribbean school. I did good in high school, ended up going to a Ivy League school, Yale University. I didn't have the best study habits, so my grades were average. I took my MCAT, just studied for it decently. I got like a 27, I believe. And the one thing that killed me is that I just did not do any shadowing of any doctors. I did not do any volunteer work. The last volunteer work I really did was in high school. I didn't do that in college. So I applied at that time. I didn't get in to any American medical school. So I took some time off. I did my master's, and then I also worked as an EMT. And idiot that I am, did not shadow anybody during that time. I just applied again with better grades that I got in my master's, and I also applied to Caribbean schools because at that time somebody had told me about Caribbean schools and that the students from Caribbean schools are able to also match into residency in the US and end up practicing in the US. So in addition to the medical schools, American schools that I applied to, I also decided to apply to some Caribbean schools. I looked at the top 4 Caribbean schools and I only applied to those. I got accepted to all of them. I got some interviews in American schools, but of course they would ask me that dreaded question, tell me about any shadowing experience, and I had none. And you could just see on their faces that they disapproved of that. But I didn't make it into any American medical school, so I decided that I didn't want to wait any longer. I didn't want to retake the MCAT, so I decided to go to a Caribbean school. So which one was I going to pick? I had AUC, SGU. I don't remember if I applied to Ross. I don't remember if I applied to Sabre. I think I did, but at least for sure I know I got into AUC. I applied to AUC and St. George's, and I got into both of them. The reason why I chose AUC was at that time, AUC had smaller class sizes compared to SGU. Now it seems as if AUC has built extra dormitories, so they have a higher amount of students that they take in, which is not, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but they had a higher number of students which are taken now. When I was selecting a medical school to go to, I decided that I wanted small class sizes so that I can speak to the professor anytime I needed to. I can get the kind of attention that I wanted to from the professors. I also picked AUC because it's on St. Martin, and St. Martin is more developed than other ones and than a lot of the other islands. And there was a lot more that information I was able to get on the American University of the Caribbean, because one of my seniors when I got there had a blog, and that blog was awesome. And that blog basically explained a lot of things about St. Martin and also about school in the American University of the Caribbean. So I chose to go to the American University of the Caribbean, and looking back, honestly I wouldn't change anything. I would do it again. I grew as a person taking this path, and I like the person that I've grown to be, and I wouldn't change that for anything. So the things that you want to know: why should you go to Caribbean school? Now, before we even go into why you should go to Caribbean school, you should know that before you just straight just get up to go to Caribbean school, you have to know the drawbacks of going to a Caribbean school. And there are some drawbacks. I'm not going to talk about any drawbacks over here, but before you make a decision to go to a Caribbean school or any medical school whatsoever, you should know the pros and the cons. Okay, so make sure you educate yourself on the cons. Now, the pros, the reason why I like the Caribbean medical school. I was able to attain my dream of being a doctor. It was an alternate pathway for, in my opinion, people that did not fit the criteria that American medical schools use to select the applicants. Now, these criteria have been put in place so that they can select the most intelligent people, but I would say the criteria is not optimal. You miss some people that are intelligent, but did not have the best study habits in the beginning, or did not do volunteer work. Right? Sure enough, by not doing volunteer work or by not doing shadowing a doctor, you're not necessarily showing that you want to go to medical school, but that does not mean that you don't want to go to medical school. It does not mean you're not passionate about medical school by not doing those things. And honestly, I felt that a lot of people were doing those things just because medical schools wanted them to do those things, not because they were passionate about that. And throughout my life, I've always done things that I am passionate about, and those are the things that I've done. And it came back to bite me when I was applying to medical school, but fine. That's me. I wouldn't change it for anything. And I'm happy where I am. So one, yes. So I was able to attain my dream of becoming a doctor through this route. So that's one. Two, I was able to make a lot of good friends. Sure enough, it was an island remote from everything else, but my class was great. And these friends and in my classes above, they helped me grow by helping me modify my studying habits. And also, another thing that I liked about it was that I was able to play in a football competition with the rest of my schoolmates. That was one. And then I was also able to play in a futsal competition with teams from the island. So St. Martin, the Dutch side of St. Martin does not have a football team. So the thing that comes in the papers is a futsal competition that's held in a part of St. Martin. And a bunch of us guys from AUC got a team together. We called ourselves the 911 Ballers. And we joined that competition to play. And the cool thing about it was, after the game, I'll come back home, blah, 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 go to school the next day. And the guard at the front gate would stop me and say, "You scored 2 goals. And the first time I heard that, I said, how do you know I scored 2 goals? Apparently it was in the paper. Kwesi Safwa Asante scored a hat trick, blah, 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 blah. So I was in the paper a couple of times. But that's beside the point. The point is, I enjoyed that part of it. The other thing that would be more beneficial to you guys to know is that AUC has, not AUC alone, at least the top 4 Caribbean schools, AUC, Ross, St. George's, Sabre, even AUA, top 5, I guess you would say, all have affiliations with hospitals in the United States, where their students come and do rotations. And because of all these affiliations with hospitals in the United States, these hospitals have exposure to a lot of Caribbean students from those top schools and know how good they are. So when it comes to matching into residency, these medical students end up doing pretty well in matching into residency as a whole. But that's for some specialties, okay? Some specialties are, based on statistics, a lot more difficult to match into. But then when you delve deeper into the numbers, you can see that maybe out of the 200 people that applied to maybe like whatever specialty it was, difficult specialty to get into, only about 10 IMGs apply to that specialty, right? So can you really come to a conclusion based on that data? Yes, no, but the point is you don't have that many Caribbean students matching into orthopedics, plastics, neurosurgery, dermatology. As such, if you're trying to go into those specialties, I would really try to get into a Caribbean school. But back to the pros. Because of the affiliations that the medical schools have with hospitals in the US, and the fact that a lot of their graduates have matched into different hospitals in the US, students from these top 4, top 5 Caribbean schools are known by these hospitals to be of a higher caliber, so they don't have that difficult of a time matching. If you know my story, you know I applied to the match 3 times. The reason why I had a difficult time matching was not because of the school that I went to, it was because of me and the mistakes that I made. I failed the step 2 CS when I shouldn't have. And other people that have a difficult time matching as well have a difficult time because they messed up somewhere. They messed up somewhere, not necessarily because of the Caribbean school. So long as you have the right kind of studying habits, you do well in your exams, you do well in your classes, you don't fail any of the USMLE exams, you should not have a hard time matching into the regular specialties like family medicine, pediatrics, internal medicine, EM, surgery. You also have a lot of Caribbean students, at least a decent amount of AUC students as far as I remember, matching to anesthesia as well. So that's a good thing. Programs in the US have exposure to Caribbean students from the top schools, which makes it easier for those students to match. So that's a good thing. And another thing I liked about AUC specifically was that I got to do rotations, not just in the US, I got to do rotations in England, and I enjoyed that as well. I did my surgery rotation in England, so that was pretty cool. Lastly, the education that you get at the top Caribbean schools are modeled after the education that you're supposed to get in the American medical schools. So it makes it easier to take on the USMLEs and so on. And the one thing that I like that the Caribbean schools are doing, at least the ones, at least AUC for sure did, was that they created a comp exam. Like I hear a lot of people complaining about, oh, the comp exam this, comp exam that, comp exam this. It's a good idea. And I appreciate that they made the comp exam because it lets you see where you are and makes you not rush to take a USMLE exam and end up failing. Because otherwise some people will just try to rush to take the exam and end up not passing the exam and hurting their chances. So that was definitely a plus. What I'm trying to say is they try their best to put you in the best position so that you can match. Looking back at everything that I went through, would I go back and do it again? Yes, I would. I loved it. I loved the island. I loved the people. I loved my classmates. I loved the hobbies that I was able to do over there. But before you make the decision to go to a Caribbean school, make sure you look at the cons in addition to the pros. Make an informed decision. And if you do decide to go to a Caribbean school, I think you'll be fine.